Alright, welcome back, prop builders. I have another tutorial for you guys. It's going to be a painting tutorial. I'm going to show you guys how to do polished marble effect with acrylic paints for your dioramas. And let's just get right into it. Okay, so here we are with the first step. I have the pink installation foam that I like using. It's a really big piece, that's why it's not in the frame with the camera. It's 24 inches by 24 inches. But the first step is we're going to go ahead and make sure we have the smoothest piece of foam that we have. We don't want any texture on this for the marble effect. And the first step, we're just going to paint this, or black base this. With this step, you don't want to use a black wash, you want a really dark base color. So I'm just going to use straight up black paint. So I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate some of that on camera. And since this is a large piece, I'm going to go ahead and paint the rest of it off camera. I just want to demonstrate. It is just straight up black paint. And if you had your black paint for a while and it's a little bit goopy, then you could go ahead and water it down just a little bit just to have a smooth consistency. As well, if you have a nice soft brush, you're going to want to use that or a foam brush because you really want a smooth texture. You don't want too many brush strokes on your paint job because you want a smooth transition between each color, because we're going to cover this with a gloss coat. It's going to really give you that marble effect at the end. So as you can see, it's just straight up black paint. I'm painting the whole base with black paint. So I'm going to go ahead and finish painting this whole thing black, and then we're going to come back to our next step. Alright, now that we have the base coat already set and done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next color. And we're going to use a parchment color from Craftsmart paint. And we're going to go ahead and use this color and apply it with a sea sponge. This is going to give it texture. We're going to just dab it on here. We're going to get almost full coverage. You still want a little bit of the black seeping through this color. So it's not really a dry brush. It's more of a stippling effect. It's going to really soften up the colors. And it's going to get rid of any streaks that are left behind from our black base. So I'm going to go ahead and start applying this on here. The same thing as I said in the last step. I'm going to apply a little bit right on camera. But since this is a big piece, I'm going to go ahead and finish it off camera, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and show the technique of the stippling with the sea sponge. And all you're really trying to do here is get a nice soft texture going, and to have only a little bit of the black showing through. And this will, like I said, this will get rid of any brush strokes that were left behind from your brush, or if you used a sponge brush, if there is some streaking that you have, this will get rid of this as well. I'm going to go ahead and do this to the whole base. And like I mentioned before, this is that parchment color. So like I said, you're going to want to cover most of the black, but you do want a little bit of it still seeping through. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off camera, and we're going to come back to the next step. Alright, now that we let that parchment color dry all up, we're going to move on to the next color, which we're going to take that original parchment color. And I'm going to go ahead and pour some in my painting bowl. Let's get some in there. And then I'm going to mix it with just a regular white paint so we could get a lighter tone of our first color. I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. And you want to make sure there's a noticeable difference of a color than the first color that you put down. So I'm going to add a little bit more white. And all I am doing is eyeballing this, adding a little bit white at a time, just to make sure I get the right tone of color I want. I just want it a little bit lighter than the original parchment color that we put down. And this is good enough for me. And we're going to use that same sea sponge that we used earlier to apply this paint. And with this paint, you're not going for a full coverage like we did here. We're going to do veins of this color. So basically, I'm going to go at a diagonal. You don't want to go straight up and down or straight across because it's not going to look right. If you go at a diagonal, it makes it look more random to your eye. So it's less noticeable if you accidentally do a pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that with my sea sponge. And like I said, you're just going to want to make streaks of this in the same way that we put down the other paint. And so we're basically making these lighter veins of this color on here. As you can see on the camera, I'm just making a straight line that curves across the board. And I'm going to make a couple of these across the board and let it dry. And like I said, you just want to add it randomly across the board. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing that randomly, and we're going to come back after this paint dries to the next step. Alright, now that that paint has dried and finished, like I said, I just went in a diagonal line this way and just made sure all my patterns went in the same direction, in that diagonal way. And I'm going to go ahead and add some black veins to this, as you see in marble. I'm just going to use a regular black acrylic paint. And the trick to this is to just go with the same direction as you made your previous veins with that lighter color that we made. And I'm going to show you how to soften up the black veins to give it a more realistic look right after I start applying it. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some of the black veins right now. I'm just grabbing a small brush just to give me more control of where I want the veins instead of grabbing a big brush and accidentally messing up. So I'm going to go ahead and go in between and somewhat on top of the lighter color that we put down. I hope the camera's picking this up. The lights are a little bit bright, and right now I only have 2 of them going. So I'm just going to go ahead and start applying these veins. You just want to let the brush take control when you're moving it down. You want to get a decent amount of black paint on there too, because the way we're going to soften this up is we're going to water it down basically. You just want to make some random patterns that go across the board as well. And a good idea of how your veins should look is you could actually look at a picture of like lightning. You just want that kind of effect. You don't have to worry about making them too perfect either. I'm going to go ahead and add some over here as well. I don't know if the camera's in frame for this side. I'm going to go ahead and add some over here. And some down here as well. And basically, a lot of these lines, they look harsh right now, but we're going to actually, like I said, soften them up. You just want to add some character to it. Like I said again, I apologize if not all of this is in frame. This is a big base that I'm making. I'm going to go ahead and add that on there. And if your line does touch the edge of your board, you're going to want to follow that line on the front facing of the foam as well. If you're going to paint the whole thing, you want to cover up all that pink. Okay, I'm going to add one more line on here, right at the top over here. Okay, now that I have my desired lines pretty much, okay, we're going to go ahead and soften this up with some water. And the way I do this is I use a spray bottle just with water in it. You want to go ahead, I'll demonstrate on the ones that you could see on camera. You want to go ahead and just spray them. And this will lighten them up and kind of blend them in as well into the painting. So you just want to hit these before they completely dry. And don't worry if they do dry on you. You can go over it with the sea sponge again and texture the paint that we had already made and just start over. And it's okay if the black paint runs a little bit. It's actually going to add to the realism to this paint effect. And any excess water that's left over, you're just going to want to clean up with a dry sponge to soak up that extra water. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my sea sponge, my dry sea sponge, and I'm going to go ahead and soak up some of this water. Like I said, this water mixing with this black paint is going to give you a realistic look. And like I said, if you do mess up and the paint does dry on you a little bit, you can get over it with the paint that we used earlier, that parchment color and that lighter color. So I'm going to go ahead and dry up the rest of this, and we're going to come back and see how it looks dried and then see if we need to do any touch-ups with that water. So I'll be right back. Alright, now that our black lines have dried up and the moisture's all gone from the foam, because the foam, since there is only one layer in some spots because of the black, It will soak into the foam a little bit if you put too much water, so just be aware of that. And make sure it's completely dry until you move on to this next step. So the next step is I'm going to just grab a container and some white paint, and we're going to make a whitewash out of it. Basically, it's the same thing as a black wash. You add white paint and water to it. And the consistency that you're looking for is a little bit thicker than whole milk. So that's the consistency you're looking for. I usually do about like a 50-50 mix and then add a little bit more paint as I need it. So I'm going to add a generous amount because this is a big base. If any of your lines seem still a little too harsh, this wash is going to help even that out as well. This wash is actually going to even out a lot of the textures that we have on here to make it look more smooth and more uniform, so you could get that marble effect. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some water from my spray bottle from earlier into here. I'm going to go ahead and mix that up with my brush and see how it came out. If I need to add more white paint, I'll add more white paint. And a good way to test it after you mix the water and the paint really well together is if you just grab it onto the side and you just hit it with your brush. If it's too runny, you can add more paint. But if it sticks on there and it seems like it's not dripping too much, then you have the right consistency. So it looks like I got it right on the first try. I'm just going to make sure I mix it all up just to make sure. And again, I recommend doing this step outside, or at least cover your work area if you're working, you know, on your counters or on your desk or something. This whitewash can go everywhere. So that looks like, yeah, that looks like the right amount. I'm gonna go ahead and you're gonna whitewash this whole thing, and like I said, this is gonna mute a lot of the textures that we got from the sponge and make everything blend in very well with each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply this over this whole board. I'm just gonna start on this side. Like I said, I'm gonna show you guys on camera so you guys could kind of see the effect it's gonna get. And it looks like it's covering up the black really well, or somewhat well. Don't panic. It is gonna lighten up and like I said, soften up after it dries. It may look like it's covering too much, but it's not. Just go with it and wait until it dries. So I just want to show you guys that effect really quick on camera before I do the rest of this off camera. Get some of the black lines so you can see how it looks, so you can know if you got your ratio right with your white paint and water. And like I said, you could apply this with a sponge brush as well, so you could get nice clean lines and not too many streaks with your brush. But if you are going to use a brush, use a soft bristle brush as well. That will help you with that too. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off camera. I'm going to come back and see how this dries up and move on to the next step. Alright, here we are with the whitewash all nice and dry. As you can see, it blended in a lot of the texture that we got from the sea sponge, and it really toned down the black veins that we made on here. The last thing to do is actually give this a good coat with a high gloss sealer, so you could get really that real marble look, because marble usually when it's refined and already cut down and polished, it's nice and shiny, so I want that effect. And all I have here is a high gloss Mod Podge. You could use any sealer that you like. Just remember, some sealers with this type of foam will eat the foam if you did not have a good base coat on here. And as well, it might sink into the foam, it might eat up at it. So just keep that in reminder of when you're gonna coat this with your high gloss varnish or something like that. Just keep that in mind. I use Mod Podge because it's safer. It's not in an aerosol can, so it doesn't eat away at the foam. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a nice coat of the high gloss on here. And I'm just gonna coat this as best I can. I'm gonna do it on the whole board. And like I said, again, either use a soft brush or a foam brush to apply your gloss, so you don't get any bubbles or any brush marks. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish glossing this whole thing off cam, and we're gonna come back and take a final look at it. Alright, here it is with the Mod Podge all nice and dry. It's nice and shiny. As you can see, you could kind of see my lights reflecting off the shininess of it. That's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I do want to mention that I do have another video coming up. It's with using this same paint scheme. I'm going to show you guys how to make some pillars. Here's just a quick preview of it. It's kind of tall, that's why it's not fitting into the frame. So I'm going to show you guys how to do those pillars coming up. I really hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, and as always guys, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and hit that sexy subscribe button. Okay, so fuck.